The gavel struck with a sound that echoed like thunder through marble and glass, silencing the shuffle of papers and whispers that swirled around the courtroom. Judge Eleanor Wren sat tall behind the bench, her lips curved in that faint, knowing smirk that lawyers both feared and admired. Before her stood Gabriel Locke, wrists bound, expression steady, as if he were watching not a trial, but a memory being replayed. The charges were read, the words, fraud, assault, obstruction, rolling off the clerk's tongue like stones sinking into water. Eleanor studied him with clinical precision, a predator of truth. But when Gabriel lifted his head, his voice was calm, almost reverent. "Ma'am," he said softly, and the silence trembled. "You were my teacher." In that moment, the smirk faltered. The judge blinked once, as though a crack had formed in her perfect marble composure. A storm gathered behind her eyes, unseen but felt by every soul in that room. The courtroom dissolved into silence, but in Eleanor's mind, the hum of fluorescent lights and the scratch of chalk returned. She saw it again. The classroom she once ruled with warmth and certainty, her young students eager to believe in justice before the world taught them its weight. Among them had been Gabriel Locke, bright-eyed and curious, asking questions that cut too close to the truth. Now he stood before her, a man branded by the system she once inspired him to trust. As the bailiff read procedural instructions, Eleanor's fingers tapped against the bench in rhythmic tension, each beat a memory she couldn't suppress. Gabriel didn't look away, his expression neither pleading nor defiant, only knowing. Outside, thunder rolled over the sea. It was as if the storm remembered what she tried to forget. When the court adjourned for recess, Diana Holt approached Gabriel with a quiet urgency that betrayed her usual composure. "You blindsided her," she whispered, leaning close enough for only him to hear. He gave no reply, merely tracing a finger along the edge of the defense table, like a man counting time. Across the room, Eleanor retreated to chambers, her reflection fractured in the glass pane of her office door. Diana watched her leave, then turned back to Gabriel. "You're not here for the plea deal, are you?" His lips twitched almost a smile. "I'm here for the truth." The words felt dangerous, like a confession to something larger than the case itself. Diana sensed it too. The hum of something buried beneath the legal pages and signatures, something that could unravel them both if spoken aloud. Eleanor's chambers were lined with plaques and framed commendations, each one a reminder of how far she'd come from that underfunded classroom on the east side. She sank into her chair, eyes drifting toward the rain, tracing crooked paths down the window. Her hand hovered above the case file but didn't open it. Instead, she reached for the drawer, pulling out an old photograph. Her first class, smiling in sun-faded uniforms. And there, near the edge, young Gabriel Locke, half-smile shy, eyes full of wonder. A knock shattered her reverie. It was Frank Duval, his voice steady but probing. "You know him?" he asked. "I did," she said, each word clipped deliberate. "Then you should recuse yourself." She met his gaze coldly. "No. Justice doesn't bend for familiarity." Yet as the door closed behind him, her reflection whispered otherwise. Amara Wren arrived unannounced, her umbrella dripping rain onto marble floors. The security guard recognized her at once. She had her mother's eyes, but none of her restraint. She found Eleanor standing alone in the corridor, the air between them heavy with the unsaid. "You didn't tell me he was one of yours," Amara said softly. Eleanor turned, face composed, voice measured. "It doesn't matter." But Amara stepped closer. "It always matters, Mom. You taught him justice. And now you'll decide if he deserves it." Eleanor's silence was answer enough. The storm outside roared as Amara walked away, leaving Eleanor in the echo of her own words once spoken to a class long ago. The law is only as just as the heart that wields it. For the first time in years, those words sounded like an accusation. Evelyn's robe feels heavier today, her breath shallow as the trial resumes under the sterile hum of courtroom lights. The air itself seems aware of the secret binding judge and defendant. Marcus sits still, the same poise masking a quiet storm. His attorney speaks of flawed audits and missing files, but Evelyn hears only echoes of chalk on a blackboard, the sound of a boy once misunderstood. She grips her pen to silence the tremor in her hand. Dana's voice cuts through her reverie, sharp, clinical, certain. The defendant, she declares, has manipulated a system built to help children, the very kind he once was. Evelyn's heart jolts. The irony sears through her, a mirror of guilt reflected across decades. The courtroom blurs for a moment, replaced by the ghost of a younger voice whispering, "You never believed me." Marcus takes the stand. The oath feels like a ritual of surrender. His voice is measured, quiet, but the room bends toward it. "I didn't steal," he says. "I rebuilt." He explains the missing funds, diverted not to greed but to save a collapsing school in a forgotten part of the city. Evelyn listens, her pulse sensing with his words. Each sentence cracks open another fragment of the past. The letter of recommendation she once refused, the day she told him talent means nothing without integrity. His eyes find hers. "I learned integrity," he says, "from someone who taught me that silence proves guilt." Evelyn's composure fractures for a heartbeat, the gavel clutched tight like an anchor in storm-tossed memory. During recess, Evelyn walks the narrow courthouse corridor, its marble floors reflecting fragments of the day's truth. Marcus stands by a vending machine, alone, a cup of stale coffee in his hand. When she approaches, neither speaks at first. The silence feels sacred, dangerous. "You remember," he says finally. She nods, unable to lie. "I remember I failed you," she admits softly. His expression hardens. "No, ma'am. You taught me what failure feels like. I just never learned how to forget it." Their words linger in the hall like ghosts, unwilling to leave. As Evelyn turns to go, his final sentence halts her mid-step. "I'm not the only one on trial here." The truth in his tone weighs heavier than any verdict. Dana Wilkes moves in like a hawk, circling Marcus with sharp precision. "So, you admit moving funds without authorization?" She presses. Marcus answers calmly, "To fix what the system ignored." The words ripple through the room. Evelyn watches, torn between judicial restraint and the ache of empathy. Leo objects relevance. Dana fires back. Motive. Evelyn hesitates, the rulebook battling the human heart. "Overruled," she says finally, though her voice trembles. Marcus looks at her, understanding something the others can't. That beneath her gavel lies not judgment, but recognition. When Dana rests her case, silence follows like the aftermath of thunder. No one in the room is sure who has just been accused. The courthouse sleeps, but Evelyn remains in her chambers, the dim lamp painting shadows across old case files. Her reflection stares back from the glass window, divided between who she was and who she's become. She opens an old drawer, retrieving a yellowed folder. Marcus Hensley, academic record. Inside is a handwritten essay titled "Justice and Mercy." The words strike her heart. Justice is only punishment, then mercy is the crime. She closes the folder slowly, her eyes glisten. Outside, sirens wail faintly. A city restless with unfinished stories. Evelyn whispers into the quiet, "Maybe mercy was never mine to give." Morning headlines scream across the courthouse steps. Judge once taught defendant conflict of interest. Evelyn's name floods every screen, her face caught mid-expression, torn between authority and guilt. Inside, whispers ripple like wildfire, jurors stealing glances, attorneys treading carefully. Dana Wilkes demands her recusal, voice edged with triumph. The court cannot stand impartial when the judge once shaped the defendant's life. Evelyn's gavel slams, but it sounds hollow against the storm. This trial, she declares, will continue under my authority. Yet the tremor in her tone betrays her. Marcus watches quietly, no satisfaction, only sorrow. He never intended to expose her, but truth has its own appetite, and it's begun to feast. Dana's cross-examination turns brutal. She waves an old disciplinary report in front of the jury. "Isn't it true," she says, "that this same judge once accused you of dishonesty?" Gasps ripple through the room. Leo objects, but Evelyn's voice cuts through. Overruled, she cannot hide from it now. Marcus meets her eyes. "Yes," he says softly, "she did, and she was right then." The words land with disarming grace, a confession wrapped in mercy. The jury watches, unsure who has just been absolved. Dana falters for the first time, her questions losing sharpness as Marcus continues. "But she also taught me that justice means facing yourself, even when you're wrong." Evelyn lowers her gaze. For the first time, the robe feels like armor she no longer deserves. The memory crashes back with merciless clarity. A young Evelyn standing before the principal's desk, her voice breaking as she insists on Marcus's suspension. "He lied," she said then, "and lies must have consequence." But the boy's eyes, proud, wounded, silent, haunt her still. In the echo of that moment, she sees what she missed. He wasn't defiant. He was desperate to be believed. The flashback shatters as present-day Evelyn glances toward him, noticing the silver cuffs at his wrists. The weight of justice feels colder now, like the metal he wears, a reflection of her own unseen chains. After court adjourns, Evelyn retreats to her chambers, but Marcus is already there. Escorted briefly by Leo to discuss a procedural motion. When the guard steps out, silence envelops them. "I didn't want this," Marcus says, voice low. "The world just likes to find blood where there's truth." Evelyn leans against her desk, exhausted. "You have no idea what it's like to live inside a title." He steps closer, unthreatening but firm. "I do. You gave me mine." For a fleeting moment, time folds. Teacher and student, judge and defendant, bound by the same hunger for redemption. She whispers, "Then let's both earn it." The guard return. The moment dissolves, but something unseen has shifted. Guilt has finally met its witness. Rain lashes the courthouse windows as Evelyn returns to the bench for what feels like Judgment Day. Her robe clings heavy on her shoulders. Her voice trembles beneath its weight. "This court," she begins, "has seen facts and figures, but not all. Truth fits in evidence." The jury shifts, confused. Dana frowns. Leo watches silently. Evelyn continues, "Once, I believed that punishment was the measure of justice. Today, I am not so certain." The words hang like lightning, illuminating the cracks in the marble of her authority. "If I cannot be fair," she says finally, "I cannot serve." She sets the gavel down, not in defeat, but in confession. Marcus lowers his head, eyes glistening. The courtroom, for the first time, feels sacred. Evelyn's chambers are silent, except for the sound of paper sliding across polished wood. Her resignation letter rests beneath her trembling hand. A few sentences to undo decades of authority. Outside, reporters swarm, demanding statements, hunting scandal. Dana Wilkes storms into the empty courtroom, furious that the case has unraveled. She walked out before the verdict. She hisses, "That's not justice, that's cowardice." But Leo, standing nearby, replies softly, "Maybe it's the bravest ruling she's ever made." Meanwhile, Evelyn exits through a side door into gray daylight, her black robe folded over her arm, like a shed skin. For the first time, she feels neither power nor pride, only the uncertain weight of truth, finally free from judgment. Judge Harold Mays takes the bench, his voice dry and procedural, stripping the room of emotion. This court acknowledges Judge Crane's withdrawal and will proceed. Dana straightens, ready to finish what she started. Marcus watches impassively, but his gaze flickers toward the now empty bench where Evelyn once sat. It feels colder without her presence. Less human, more machine. The new judge treats every word as data, every witness as a statistic. Justice has lost its face. As Leo begins his final arguments, his voice trembles with quiet defiance. The law remembers what it can measure, he says, but mercy remembers what it costs. His words hang like dust motes in sunlight, fragile, shimmering, true. A television studio hums under sterile lights. Evelyn sits opposite a journalist, her hands clasped, posture calm but guarded. "Do you regret it?" the journalist asks. Evelyn exhales slowly. "Regret implies I would have chosen differently." "And would you?" A pause. "No," she answers. "For once I didn't protect the law. I protected the truth." The interviewer leans in. "Some say you betrayed your oath." Evelyn's eyes narrow slightly, not in anger, but in clarity. "My oath was to justice." Sometimes justice refuses to fit the law. The cameras fade to black as the anchor's expression softens, not convinced but moved. Across the city, the world begins to see her not as a fallen judge, but as a woman who finally told the truth out loud. The courtroom is packed, air thick with tension. Judge Mays calls for silence as the jury foreman stands, verdict slip in hand. On the charge of embezzlement, he reads, "We find the defendant not guilty." A collective breath releases across the room. Marcus' shoulders sag with disbelief. Leo grips his arm in silent triumph. Dana lowers her gaze, defeated but thoughtful. Marcus turns toward the empty bench, his eyes searching for Evelyn, though she is nowhere in sight. The verdict feels less like victory and more like release, a moment where the truth has survived the machinery meant to bury it. Outside, the storm clears. Sunlight pierces through the courthouse windows, as if the building itself exhales. Days later, beneath a golden afternoon sky, Evelyn sits on a park bench overlooking the city courthouse. The world has moved on. Headlines have shifted to newer scandals. Marcus approaches quietly, his suit gone, wearing a simple gray jacket. He sits beside her without a word. For a moment, they watch children playing near the fountain, laughter echoing in the same city that once judged them both. "You were right," she murmurs. "About what?" he asks. "About silence." He smiles faintly. "We both broke it." She turns to him, her eyes softening. "You both broke it." She turns to him, her eyes softening. "So what will you do now?" He looks toward the courthouse dome, gleaming in the sunlight. "Teach," he says simply. Evelyn nods. The sound of laughter fills the air. The world, for once, balanced between justice and mercy. Morning light creeps through Evelyn's apartment window, soft and uncertain. The city hums below, indifferent, alive, unchanged. Yet for her, everything feels suspended. Her phone buzzes with messages. Journalists, former colleagues, whispers of scandal reborn as redemption. She turns it face down. On her table lies the resignation letter she never mailed. The one that ended not with apology but with acceptance. Across town, Marcus stands before a classroom of teenagers, his voice calm, his lesson handwritten on the board. Justice is remembering where we came from. The room listens, unaware that the man before them once stood accused. In separate spaces, teacher and student live their new truths, both absolved, neither free. A committee convenes in the austere marble halls of the State Judicial Board. Evelyn sits at a long table, facing a panel of gray, suited officials. Their tone is measured, polite, surgical. "You compromised a trial," one declares. "I reveal the truth," she replies. Truth doesn't require permission. They exchange wary glances. One older member, silent until now, finally speaks. "Perhaps that's what frightens us most, Judge Crane, that you might be right." The gavel falls, not as punishment, but as punctuation. The verdict: censure without disbarment. She's no longer a judge, but not condemned either. She walks out, shoulders straight, a woman no longer bound by the institution she once served, but still bearing its weight. News spreads across the nation. A judge resigns to uphold conscience. A defendant acquitted on grounds of principle. Talk shows debate whether justice has lost its spine or gained a soul. Dana Wilkes watches from her office, eyes unreadable. Her assistant asks, "Do you think she did the right thing?" Dana's answer is slow, thoughtful. "I think she did the impossible." She turns toward the window where the courthouse gleams under pale light. In another part of the city, Leo Carr lectures at a law symposium, quoting Evelyn's final words from the bench. "If I cannot be fair, I cannot serve." The audience listens in reverent silence, not as lawyers, but as people. Weeks later, Evelyn visits the school where she once taught, now Marcus's domain. She stands at the doorway, watching him guide students through a debate on ethics. His voice is calm but firm, his passion grounded in lived experience. When class ends, he turns and smiles. "You came," she nods, stepping inside, eyes tracing the same chalkboard that once bore her handwriting. "You did what I couldn't," she says softly. "You turned pain into lesson." He gestures to a seat, but she remains standing, looking at the wall where a new phrase is written. "Mercy is justice with memory." Her eyes glisten. "That was yours," he says. "It was ours," she replies. The bell rings, and for once, neither of them flinches at the sound of endings. That evening, Evelyn writes one final letter. Not to court, not to the press, but to Marcus. Her words are steady, graceful, stripped of formality. "He reminded me that justice isn't something we give. It's something we recognize in one another. If my silence once cost you your future, your truth has given me mine." She seals the letter. No return address, no signature. As she walks it to the mailbox, the sun sinks low, painting the city in amber and gold. Across town, Marcus finds the letter the next morning on his desk, unsigned but unmistakable. He smiles, placing it in a drawer beside the essay he once wrote as a boy, Justice and Mercy. The drawer closes softly, not with finality but with peace. Months have passed, yet Evelyn's name continues to ripple quietly through the justice system. In law schools, her decision is debated. In classrooms, her words are quoted. Somewhere between scandal and sainthood, she has become a parable. Marcus watches a televised seminar where a young law student argues, "She proved that truth can survive authority." He smiles faintly, sensing the irony. Once judged, now her lesson reshapes judgment itself. Across town, Evelyn volunteers at a community legal clinic, guiding those too poor to be heard. "Justice," she tells a trembling woman, "isn't about who wins. It's about who's finally seen." In her eyes glows something no robe ever gave her: peace earned through consequence. A grand auditorium buzzes with anticipation. Evelyn steps onto the stage as guest speaker at a legal ethics symposium, her first public appearance since the trial. The audience stands, not in applause, but in respect. She pauses before speaking, her voice steady yet reflective. "I once believed justice was blind," she begins. "But blindness is not virtue, it's avoidance. True justice sees everything, even itself." Murmurs ripple through the hall as she continues, her tone neither proud nor apologetic, simply human. "We don't lose integrity when we feel. We lose it when we refuse to." When she finishes, silence follows. Not the silence of judgment, but the silence of thought. Even Dana Wilkes, seated in the crowd, cannot help but nod. After the symposium, Evelyn steps outside into the night air. Dana approaches, her sharpness replaced by something almost gentle. "You changed the case," Dana says, "and maybe the rest of us too." Evelyn smiles faintly. "You changed it by fighting me." Dana laughs softly, the tension of rivalry dissolving into quiet admiration. "Would you ever return?" Evelyn shakes her head. "No. The bench needs enforcers. I've become something else." They share a silence filled with mutual recognition. Not victory, not defeat, just truth. As Dana walks away, she calls back, "For what it's worth, Judge, you were right about one thing." Evelyn tilts her head. "What's that?" Dana smiles. "Justice remembers." Back in his classroom, Marcus writes a new phrase on the chalkboard. "The law is written by hands, but justice is carried by hearts." His students debate its meaning, their voices rising and falling like waves. When one asks if he truly believes that, Marcus looks out the window where sunlight paints the desks gold. "I didn't," he admits, "not until someone showed me what it costs to believe in it." The bell rings, and he erases the board slowly, leaving faint white traces behind. Ghosts of words that refuse to disappear. Much like the lessons they now carry. That evening, Evelyn walks through the city alone, past courthouses, classrooms, and corners, where people argue, love, and live by their own unspoken laws. In a store window, she catches her reflection. Older, humbler, freer. Behind her reflection glows the courthouse dome, the same building that once defined her. She smiles softly, whispering, "Still watching me, aren't you?" The reflection doesn't answer, but the faint sound of a gavel seems to echo in the distance, not condemning, not calling her back, simply reminding her she was never truly its prisoner. She turns away and walks on, disappearing into the city's hum, leaving behind the woman who once judged and stepping fully into the one who finally understood. A letter arrives on Cream's stationery, embossed with the seal of the state. Evelyn opens it slowly, expecting reprimand, but instead finds an invitation. "You are hereby invited to deliver the keynote address at the annual Justice Reform Summit." The irony makes her smile. Once exiled by the system, now summoned to speak for its renewal. Across town, Marcus receives the same invitation, though for different reasons, to represent educational reform for rehabilitated youth. Two names once divided by authority now appear side by side on the same program. Evelyn reads the date, sets the letter on her table, and looks out the window at the city she once judged. "One last trial," she whispers to herself, "but this time, we both testify." The Justice Reform Summit unfolds inside a grand hall of glass and stone, sunlight pouring over rows of lawmakers, educators, and citizens. Evelyn steps to the podium, her voice steady, her eyes alight with conviction. "We have built systems to measure wrongs," she begins, "but none to restore what those wrongs destroy." She speaks not of Marcus by name, but of every person judged by a single mistake. Then Marcus follows, his words softer but sharper. "Forgiveness is not weakness," he says. "It's the courage to remember without hatred." When he finishes, the audience rises, not in applause, but in reverent silence. For the first time, justice feels less like law and more like light. After the summit, Evelyn wanders through a corridor lined with portraits of judges, stern faces frozen in legacy. At the end of the hall, an empty frame hangs, newly mounted. A plaque beneath it reads, "For those who changed what justice means." She pauses, realizing it isn't for her alone, but for everyone who dared to see the law as human. Marcus joins her, silent, standing shoulder to shoulder. "Do you think they'll ever fill it?" he asks. Evelyn smiles faintly. "Maybe it's not meant to be filled. Maybe it's meant to remind us that the work is never done." The two stand before the empty frame. Teacher and student, judge and judged, reflections of justice, unfinished, but alive. Back in Marcus's classroom, sunlight streams across desks, scattered with notebooks and hope. Evelyn guest teaches for the day. The students lean forward, eager, listening as she writes 3 words on the board: truth, mercy, memory. The law, she says, is a structure, but justice is a story, and every one of you will write it differently. Marcus watches from the back, smiling. The students applaud, but Evelyn hushes them with a hand. "Don't applaud," she says softly. "Just remember." In that moment, the room glows with something sacred, the merging of knowledge and grace. The lesson ends, but the echo remains, as if the walls themselves have learned to listen. Evening settles over the city. The courthouse lights dimmed, the air still. Evelyn walks once more through its echoing corridors, not as judge, but as witness to her own story. She pauses in the empty courtroom, runs her hand along the bench where she once sat, and places the gavel gently upon it. "Justice," she whispers. "You finally learned to listen." Outside, Marcus waits by the steps. Together they watch as the courthouse lights fade, leaving only the glow of the street lamps. Quiet, human, imperfect. Evelyn turns to him and says, "The verdict's in, Marcus." He looks at her, curious. "And what's the sentence?" She smiles. "To live with it, fully." They walk away, side by side, their silhouettes merging with the city's rhythm as dawn begins to rise.